Well, I was working for the Santa Monica Police and my arm broke in July of '08 and it would never heal. And then on Thanksgiving of '08, I coughed and several vertebrae in my back collapsed and I was down on the ground and I couldn't move. And my mother took me to the emergency room and I checked into the hospital.
Well, 3 years ago, I was on a cruise with my girlfriend. I'd never been sick. I was healthy. Every day of the cruise, I started getting weaker and weaker. By the time we got off the ship, I was barely able to pull my suitcase.
About 10 months ago, they discovered I had lymphoma. Then as a result of that, they discovered I had stage 1 lung cancer. And we sat with the doctor and he said to us that I had 1 year to 2 to live.
That was the average. Could be shorter.
Yeah.
You know, he could live a month, he could live a year, and there's no solution.
They didn't know what I had, and a few days later, I had an operation to replace the femur in my leg with a pole and bolt my pelvis back together, and they couldn't do anything for the back, but I was told I had a fatal blood disease called multiple myeloma. My spine had tumors throughout it, and so did my skeleton. My skeleton was like Swiss cheese, and I couldn't move because the tumors were compressing everything and breaking the bones. I asked what the prognosis was. The surgeon said you need to write a will and find a place for your son to live.
I feel in looking back at my life that I got myself into a certain situation where I felt so overwhelmed and so trapped in a way emotionally that I created a way to leave. Well, I was aware of what I was experiencing. I wasn't really aware of what I was allowing it to do.
I asked for how much time and they just told me to take care of my affairs immediately. And that night I was just crying in the hospital. Just to get me in the ambulance, I couldn't move, and if they moved me, the pain was level 10 because all my vertebrae were broken. So they inched me a millimeter at a time, and then I would do it. While I was being moved, ribs broke, more vertebrae broke, and if I moved too fast, but I had to just work through that.
The next night, I get a call from the oncologist that saw me in the emergency room, and he said, call a friend and have them take you to the ER because you have a life-threatening situation. So I said to him, let me pull over. And I can tell you exactly the street that I pulled over on because it was really frightening. And I said, tell me where we go from here.
There was a time when our lives were more in rhythm with nature, a time when our food was consumed only in its natural state. We physically moved about in order to make our lives progress, and we were not overwhelmed by a hectic, stressful pace of living. The United States led the world in health. Today, we are at the bottom of this list. Have we lost our connection to our own natural way of life?
Everything we buy comes with instructions. Your movie cameras, our TVs, everything comes with instructions. We come with nothing, right?
In the 1900s, less than 4% of Americans had heart disease. Today, it's close to 35 to 40% die of heart attacks and strokes.
Almost 1 in every 2 people develop cancer now in the United States.
People completely are disconnected from the idea that they're the cause of their own misery. They think that it's a lack of pills.
Disease is not natural. It's just not, it's normal, but it's not natural.
Most believe genetics cause disease, for which the only treatments are drugs and surgeries.
How could it be genetic if these diseases didn't occur in human history? How could even cancer be genetics if, for example, in the Orient, areas of the world have less than 1% of them have breast cancer? They move to America, about 15% of American women get breast cancer.
How much genes contribute to the diseases in our world, and it turns out far less than 10%, probably even less than 5%. And the significance says, well, wait, if genes are only responsible for at most 10% of the illness on our planet, what about the other 90% of illness? And the answer is, it has nothing to do with genes and has everything to do with lifestyle.
We were intended to be whole and healthy and complete and strong and vital in the world. And if that's not happening, there is a reason. And it is actually something that we've been doing to get in the way of that naturally expressing on its own.
A new health paradigm in the world today is what you hold in your beliefs becomes the overriding determining factor to your health.
Most people have never been taught how to use the magnificent tool of their mind and don't realize that all thoughts are forces of attraction.
Every thought creates form on some level. And all that our physical experience is a reflection of our thoughts.
The power of thinking is equally powerful, but positive thinking takes you in a healthy direction. Negative thinking can actually kill you.
We each possess the most precious of gifts, a magnificent self-healing body and the absolute ability to overcome nearly any disease.
People don't see disease as something that's a warning. They don't see like the light goes on in their car and the oil light starts flashing oil, 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 and you bring it to the mechanic, and instead of putting more oil in the car, he snips the wires so you don't see it going off.
I can tell you how to get healthy in one sentence. Do the opposite of what got you sick. So if you weren't moving enough, move more. If you're eating too much, eat less. If you're sleeping too little, sleep more.
If you want to be less vulnerable to illness and injury as you move into your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond, then there's only one formula, and it doesn't come through your mouth. It's not from a pill, a potion, or processed food. It comes from you getting off your ass, finding something that you love, something that you're excited to get up and do.
We do have documented cases where there is a seemingly miraculous cessation of symptoms. We know that there are people who are told you're going to die within a week who live for another 30 or 40 more years. So I think sometimes we think about and study a little bit too much the places where it goes the way we've heard about it going in many people, and perhaps we don't study enough what happened in that place where a miracle occurred.
When you focus on what is wrong, you wound your body and empower your enemy. When you focus on life and living, miracles happen.
We have now learned of a new relationship within our body that may reveal the answer to many of our health issues.
Now we're beginning to understand that our hearts literally create a signal within our bodies that communicates with our brain that either affirm our health and our healing or become the obstacle between us and our healing.
We've put our finger on the primary factors that create disease, but people have the right to know it.
And it is under your complete control. The diversity in all of nature is so vast, it's hard to fathom. So many forms of beauty. Our spirit lifts when we experience the playfulness of a dolphin and other animals. Our seriousness falls away, and we remember it's okay to have fun. The geese fly thousands of miles without GPS, right back to the exact nesting place of their birth. Nature is beyond words. This amazing beauty and diversity of our wildlife makes one wonder, how did all this happen? Where did it all come from? There is much more to nature than we realize. Animals know when to migrate, what to eat, where to forage, how to raise their young, all with little instruction. Where does this natural intelligence come from? They are complete and just know. How do they know? This is where your true genius lies too, in your natural knowing, bestowed to you at birth. This natural knowing, where does it come from? After millions of years of trials and testing, life creates its record of experiences. This evolution, this history, it's our natural intelligence. Knowledge is passed on to all life forms. This innate intelligence, this life force, lies within all of us. Some call it God. Some call it universal intelligence or spirit. Others call it their intuition, inner voice, even gut feeling. Tapping into this intelligence, your consciousness, your natural knowing, this is where your true power exists. This power is not separate from us. It's in each and every one of us equally. We often block this power through our limiting thoughts. If we listen in stillness, we can always hear what we need to know. You are more powerful than you may realize. Just to refresh your memory, you were involved in the greatest race ever. Over 40 million sperm racing to fertilize a most important egg. And only one very determined and romantic one makes it. To give you an idea of the scale of this race, the New York City Marathon has over 25,000 people running at the start. Now, imagine this magnified over nearly 2,000 times. One winner out of 40 million. If you don't think this union that you created has a big purpose, just consider the magnitude of this event. It's truly a miracle you are here. This power enables you to achieve anything you desire in life, including vibrant health. You have a mission. It is to seek your natural calling, and every one of us has a gift of genius. You are not excluded. What is your calling?
Hi, I'm Bernie Siegel. I've spent a good portion of my life, some 50 years, as a student of life. I was a surgeon for several of those decades, but then decided to venture into a different direction. I felt a deep calling to help people with health challenges, many life-threatening, such as cancer and AIDS, when I realized I couldn't cure every disease. My life was redirected when a patient of mine said, "I need to know how to live between office visits." I learned a lot about life, what destroys it, what sustains it, what makes us thrive, grow, and achieve our potential. I've seen patients who were told they had only a short time to live, but who are alive and thriving decades later. I have seen others who ate the right foods, exercised regularly, took vitamins, but succumbed to an illness anyway because they were under constant stress. When you love your life and body, miraculous things happen. Why do they happen? What goes on in our minds and bodies when faith, hope, and love are present in our lives? So let's start here. The body is a sacred garment. It's your first and last garment. It's what you enter life in and what you depart from. And it should be treated with honor and respect. Your body responds to how we treat it and how we feel about life. I'm going to introduce some of my friends who have some truly astonishing information and insights. And I will be offering some anecdotal clues for you along the way, because stories are truer than the truth.
I was cloning stem cells 44 years ago, and at that time there were just a handful of us in the entire world that even knew what stem cells were. The experiments I did in the stem cell cultures revealed a truth that genes do not control their biology. A gene is a blueprint, but it doesn't have an ability to know when it should be activated or when it should not. A gene doesn't know what's going on in the world around it. And yet we talk about genes turning on and off and making decisions. And when you do that, then you say, well, then it's the gene's decisions, not your decisions, that control your life. And that concept called genetic determinism, genes control your traits, makes us victims of our heredity. So if there's cancer running in your family, Alzheimer's, diabetes running in your family, we have a belief, oh, these genes control these traits and I'm a recipient of these genes and my future will have these diseases in them. And we buy into that belief when it turns out to be totally false.
The choices we make every day have a dramatic effect on how you're going to look, how you're going to feel, and what category of the population you're going to fall into. And when you look at the statistics, they're staggering. Almost 1 in every 2 people develop cancer now in the United States. These things don't just happen to you. They happen because of our choices. There is the rare case of the person who is born with this issue.
Science perceives of the body as a vehicle. My biological body is like a car. And what we have looked at in regard to health and disease is, oh, when the vehicle isn't working right, there's a breakdown of the vehicle. And then we blame the vehicle. So, oh, the parts don't work right, the genes don't work right, the biochemistry is off. And this is a problem for the simple reason is conventional biology sees the body as a gene-driven, computerized vehicle. So if there's anything wrong with the system, we go to the genes and look at what's going wrong. The biology is not driven by the genes. It's driven by our response to the world, our perceptions, and how we deal with the world. Yes, the body is a mechanical vehicle. Maybe 5, maybe 10% of disease is actually because the vehicle was built incorrectly at the start. But the issue is they've left the driver out of the vehicle. And if you go to the junkyard, for example, and you got all these cars all junked there, and I say, how many of these cars are in here because the vehicle failed? And how many of these cars are in here because the driver failed? And the significance is about the same percentage as in our health issues, about 90% of those cars in there because of driver error.
The universe, the stars. It looks like a typical night. The perfect ratio of gases and elements from over billions of years. Out of what appears to be nothing visible to the eye, and then this. A miraculous Big Bang and symphony of matter. Who could have imagined this? Sometimes we see things differently from what they appear to be. Perceptions. It's all based upon our beliefs. How do they affect our lives, our health? A solid mass forms. Life begins. Is anything impossible? Or is everything possible?
The most significant factor that affects a cell is what is going on in the environment. The cells are designed by nature to accommodate and adapt whatever's ever going on in their environment. So this is why organisms can stay alive in a world that is dynamically changing. Because if genes said, this is your mechanical way you run your biology, and the world dynamically changes, and I'm still using the old gene program, it doesn't work. So nature was more intelligent. Nature said, I'll make genes adjustable in response to the environment. Cells directly read the environment and adjust their genetics. But humans, the cells that make up our body, don't directly read the environment. It's the nervous system of our body reads the environment, interprets it, and then sends the signals to my cells. So between the environment and my cells, now I have something called perception. It's not always the environment that directly controls our cells, it's our perception of the environment.
What researchers have found is there are essentially 2 fundamental emotions that are at the root of all that we will experience, and they are simply the emotions of fear and the emotions of love. Whether or not we sense fear or love in a given situation is a factor that's largely determined by our perceptions. If I'm in fear, I say, am I in fear? I'm in love. Well, okay, if I'm in fear, honor that. I'm definitely in fear. Now, what is the perception that's leading me to sense that fear? Does it make sense? Is it a reasonable perception? And this is where our thoughts come in to help us to understand the logic if our response makes sense in the presence of a given situation.
I believe illness and emotionality are very, very, very closely connected. I was feeling resentful about certain things. I was feeling angry. I was feeling sometimes helpless. I was feeling like obligated.
I actually fought for 8 weeks with my insurance company. They always say, you know, keep all the stress out of your life because that's what causes your cancer in the first place is you know, the stress factor. And here I was battling with an insurance company and it was very, very stressful.
You know, you can't mess around. Everything we think, everything we say, everything has a continuation to it. I could see my part in this. I don't think it's the only thing that creates it, but I think there are other elements come together with that element to create it. I knew the emotions that were there. I just didn't realize the consequence of allowing myself to go to those places and indulge myself.
Where does the chemistry of the blood come from? The answer is the brain is the chemist. It releases the chemistry into the blood through our thoughts. So the chemistry that's released comes from the brain, yeah, but what determines which of the chemicals are released by the brain? The answer is your thoughts and your beliefs and your perceptions, your mind interpreting the world. I'm sitting here right now, I close my eyes, I open up my eyes, and there's someone I love in front of me. My perception of someone I love causes me to release chemicals like dopamine, the pleasure chemical, oxytocin, the chemical that causes us to have bonding and relationships together. It causes the release of serotonin and growth hormones. These are hormones that, when they get into the blood, enhance our body's health and maintenance of the body and the growth of the body. And that's why when you open your eyes and you're in love, biologically, you're feeding the best nutrition and information to the cells possible. If I would take the chemistry of negative thoughts, which are stress hormones, cortisol, inflammatory agents, and add those to my culture dish, my cells would ultimately die out in that culture environment. It's the chemistry of the body that regulates the behavior and genetics of the cell, and the chemistry of the body is controlled by the brain releasing all these different modulators of our health.
When we feel stressed, when we are frightened, when we live our lives in perpetual and chronic fear, that is a very different kind of signal. And I'm not going to say it's right or wrong or good or bad, because all of these signals serve us in one way or another. Chronic, perpetual stress, chronic, perpetual fear shuts down the ability to create the healing in our bodies because we are in what is called fight or flight. And that kind of an experience signals our heart to tell our brain to create the hormones, cortisol for example, and high levels of adrenaline that prepare us for the fight or flight that we're perceiving.
The one side of the coin is love releases chemicals that enhance your growth and your energy, and that's why it's so healthy to be in love. And the flip side of that coin is if you open your eyes and there's not someone you love, but something that scares you, something that threatens you, then the chemistry that's released from the brain is designed to protect you. Well, to protect you, if I have to run away from a lion or whatever it is, then I want to allocate all of the energy for my fight or flight. Otherwise, I'm not going to survive. So protection says, when I get in protection, I have to put all my energy into protection. I say, yeah, but what was that energy doing before you needed protection? Oh, it was providing for my growth. Then the moment you get into protection, you take the energy you were using for growth and now you save that to run away from the lion. I go, yeah, so it basically says, when you're in protection, you actually shut down the growth and maintenance of the system. Now, nature didn't make a mistake in doing this because nature's intention was, in the world that we used to live in, you didn't need that fight or flight all the time. And when you needed it, if the lion did come, you ran away from the lion, and if you got away from the lion, then you went right back into growth again. You cannot sustain life in protection because the chemicals of protection short-circuit the growth of the body to use that energy for running away. In the world of the old days, we used to just use that occasionally. In the world today, 24/7, 365, we were never designed to be that long in a compromised growth state, and that's why the health issues in our world are going out of control, because the fear is causing the chemicals to be released into the culture medium of the body that shut down its growth. And the stress hormones shut off the immune system.
So, if genes are not in charge, what is making the decisions which lead to our acquiring a specific disease at a certain time in our lives? Your beliefs shape your experiences of health and healing, just as negativity can short-circuit wellness and recovery. Positive thought and emotions can ignite, strengthen, and extend the protections afforded by your immune system.
Every thought creates form on some level. And all that our physical experience is a reflection of our thoughts.
Environment controls the reading of the genes. They are modified and adjusted to your response to the world, which is an infinitely variable range. So everything in our world, though, every thought that we have is in some way feeding back. We are all familiar with a concept called the placebo effect. Take a drug or a surgery or whatever it is I do, and I so believe in it, I get healed. And then we find out later, well, let's say that drug that you believed in turns out to be a sugar pill. And we say, then basically, well, the sugar pill didn't heal you. So what did heal you? And the answer is, my thoughts healed me. There's the consequence of negative thinking. And the negative thinking is called nocebo effect. It's not whether it's positive or negative, it's the power of thinking. Power of thinking is equally powerful, but positive thinking takes you in a healthy direction. Negative thinking can actually kill you.
Oftentimes people will say, so do you mean that I'm not well in my life because I've invited it in? Are you saying that I've called this to myself, that I've asked for this? And I want to say back to you, no, and yes. There is a both and in this picture. Of course, no one says, gosh, I think I'm going to do cancer, in the next 20 years. That isn't how it happens on a conscious level. But what we have done is chosen the things that will limit us, will limit our vitality, will limit our ability to self-heal. And so the byproduct of that is cancer, is disease.
I could eat a perfect, healthy, let's say macrobiotic diet. Some people think that's what the greatest diet is. And yet I have beliefs about my life that are not supporting my health. That's why I got disease in the first place. So I say, okay, well then I'm just gonna eat this food and this will compensate. And I go, no, it doesn't. You can still eat the food, but if you still have the same thoughts, the chemistry of the thoughts are what causing the illness, not the food.
Learning how to change my thoughts so I could walk again. Because I couldn't move, my legs obviously, but I just lay there in the bed and said, I can walk, I will walk, I am walking, I am walking. My body is healing and I am stronger and stronger, and I said it over and over, and it worked, and I got up. I would have just died like the person in the bed next to me. From that point on, I knew I had to change the way I thought.
During that period of time, I would just get almost a mantra that I would walk during the day as far as I could. I started meditation and lots of prayer and little things like that. I just kept saying, I'm going to kick it to the curb. I'm just going to kick it to the curb. I would talk to my stem cells like they were my babies, nurturing them morning and night, and, about how strong they are and how rich they are and how they're multiplying.
And I would have never survived the chemotherapy. I had 4 different kinds and radiation. But the only thing that got me through that was the positive affirmations and changing my mind. And they told me to stay in the bed, but I didn't. In the isolation ward, I walked around the ward constantly, whenever I could, because they said if you bump into something, you'll bleed to death because you have no platelets and you have no red blood cells due to the chemotherapy. I said my blood is clean and healthy. My blood is clean and healthy. And I walked around the 6th floor of Ronald Reagan Hospital in the isolation section constantly. And it made me tired and sick, but I just kept on thinking.
As you saw with Daryl, in order to come to a life full of power, we must change our words to ourselves. Affirmations and meditation are great tools for changing our inner weakness and replacing them with positive strength. If you repeat an affirmation over and over again, it becomes embedded in your subconscious mind, and eventually it becomes your reality. Studies show that optimists live longer, healthier lives than pessimists, even when the pessimist's view of life is more accurate. If our self-talk gives us hope and a positive outlook, we will live very different lives than if we await trouble. You know the old saying, what you see is what you get. Your attitude determines what you see, so always look on the bright side. The choice is yours. We create our own future. Become an optimist.
My sister came to the hospital with a book, Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. I just knew once I read the book that I had a lot of resentment, and I didn't even know I had that. And I did what it said, forgive, in like the first 2 chapters, and I did. And when I did that, I just started to shake in the bed after I forgave somebody, and I just started to feel better right away.
A friend of mine had given me a box of cards. I picked one up and I read it, and it said, to start your healing, you must forgive. It was like this lightning struck, and I knew exactly what I had to do.
I forgave somebody who had bothered me for 14 years. I just said, I release all my hatred and resentment, and I forgive. She'll show you what in your mind is causing it. And it was frighteningly accurate in every way, even throughout my treatment, because I had 2 years of intensive treatment. That's what got me through it.
Hadn't talked to someone in an ex in about 8 years. Didn't even know if I had his phone number. And I picked it up and I knew I had to forgive him because that was the largest stress factor in my life. So I forgave him. And that's when my healing started.
If I made it happen or helped it to happen, I can fix it. And if it's beyond my power, you know, that I'm a victim of it, how am I going to fix it? It's not beyond my power, because you don't want to wind up like this. And I don't mean like me now, I feel I'm healing, but you don't want to wind up with somebody sitting across from you telling you you may only have a year or 2 to live, going through the pain of cancer, going through the terror of cancer. Handle your stuff. You know, if you're feeling those things, do something about it. Pay attention to yourself and work through those things.
The reason forgiveness matters so much is because when my heart is open to focus on your innocence rather than your guilt, to focus on who you are today rather than the mistakes that you made yesterday, not just giving a person the benefit of the doubt, but give them a break. When the heart is softer that way, then it's an act of self-interest in a way, because that kind of emotional generosity doesn't just serve the other person, it serves us. At the same time, the critical attitudes, the judgmental attitudes, the no, I will not forgive you, doesn't hurt you. It hurts me. You know, once I was doing an AIDS support group and a young man said to me, we were talking about the role of forgiveness and healing. So this man said to me, I have to forgive everybody? And I remember my response to him was, I don't know, do you have the flu or do you have AIDS? Because if you only have the flu, just forgive a few people. If you have AIDS, like, yeah, it's like take all the medicine.
Forgiveness requires nothing in return. There are no conditions. It gets rid of old baggage and clears up unfinished business. If you want to give yourself a gift, forgive. Forgiveness is the highest form of letting go of resentment and ego. Like love, forgiveness benefits the giver and the receiver. As Plato once said, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle.
It is important to realize that it is all perfect. Everything that is unfolding in the course of your life is a perfect journey. And so if a disease process has occurred in your life, we have to assume that it is also serving part of your journey in some way. The patients that I've worked with, they have all said that it has served me greatly to have been through this journey of disease. In the course of that journey, they have learned a little bit more about themselves. They have learned what matters most. A quickening has occurred in the course of their lives that has allowed them to reframe what is important, to reframe their value system, to reframe their relationship with their intimate self. In that moment, what happens is we come to know who we are. When we allow ourselves to stop running the mind so much that we can't hear anything except our own thoughts, and we instead are able to sense this still voice from this still point deep within us, we begin to access the wisdom that has been handed down to us from generation after generation.
Most people have never been taught how to use the magnificent tool of their mind and don't realize that all thoughts are forces of attraction. Like attracts like and opposite attract. So we always attract to us the experiences that are in resonance with our dominant thoughts.
The chemistry of the body controls the fate and genetics of the cell, and the chemistry is related to the mind's interpretation of the world, and that interpretation releases the chemistry. Then I say, so where'd you get the interpretations of the world from? Your basic interpretations of the world were downloaded through your parents and your family and your community before you were 6. And this is the part of the brain, the subconscious, that runs the show most of the time. Very important understanding is that we have 2 parts that constitute one mind. One is called the conscious mind, one is called the subconscious mind. They are different functional elements. For years we've considered the mind as a single entity, so that if my conscious mind became aware of something, then of course my subconscious mind should know it as well. And it turns out that's the failure of our thinking, and that is the 2 minds are separate entities. They learn in different ways. The conscious mind is creative. That's the one that has your source, your identity, your spirit in it. That's the one that has your wishes and desires in it. You say, what do you want from life? Well, then you create an answer. I say it comes from the conscious mind. Because the subconscious mind is not necessarily a creative mind, very little creativity in it. It's basically a habit mind. It learns experiences, and then you push the button and it plays the habit over again. It's like a jukebox with programs in it. So I can entertain wonderful healing thoughts with my positive thinking conscious mind, and I go, well, that's very nice, but how much of those thoughts are controlling your life? And then we go back to the data. Only 5% of your life is controlled by your conscious mind. So you say, oh, I have positive thoughts. It only influences 5% of my life. 95% of your life is still programmed by the subconscious beliefs, which are other people's programs. And since you don't see them, you don't realize what chemistry you're putting into your body. Every one of us operates day to day with behaviors that we don't see because they're automatic.
If you're not happy with it, or you're not as healthy as you would like to be, there is a reason. And it always stems from a basic core belief system. We have limited what is possible for us and what is not possible for us based upon past experiences that we have had. And it is all stored at the subconscious level. What the conscious mind can do is turn its attention to reframing some of the things that may be held at the subconscious level, asking myself, today, how would I have it be if I could have it any way I choose? What is it that I would lean into if I could go in any direction? And in doing that, we begin to unfold the path that is ultimately intended for us.
So the question is, how do I know what the programs are? Well, this is the fun part, because a lot of people think I got to go back through psychology and review. You don't have to waste your time doing that. If your life is 95% from your subconscious, then by definition, your life is a printout of your subconscious programs. You don't have to go backwards, you're living with these programs. So you look at your life. the things that work for you and are easy and come to you and you're happy with, you've got programs in your subconscious that acknowledge I can have those things. Anything you struggle with, anything you have to work hard to overcome, anything that requires a lot of effort in your life, requires that effort, requires that struggle, because you have beliefs in your subconscious that don't support that end. And so basically it says, you look at your life and say, the things that work, good, I have beliefs that support those. The things that don't work right, whether it's health, relationships, job, is because there are beliefs in the subconscious mind that are sabotaging you. We're not going against invisible forces. We're going against our own limitations that are not visible to us. So the fun part is you can say, well, what are the things that aren't working? I say, take those, make statements of belief out of them. See if your beliefs support you in the things you're looking for. One of the biggest belief problems that people have is if I say, test yourself for the statement, I love myself. And you're going to find the largest portion of the population will not be able to give a positive test for that statement.
If I'm not extending love, I'm projecting fear. It is as though we live in two parallel universes. And in a very real way, you decide which universe you want to live in. The universe that is dominated by fear, or the universe that is dominated by love. And I can tell you this much, you choose the one dominated by love, your chances for physical healing are a whole lot increased.
The issues we face as adults, our propensity toward things like cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, obesity, are all rooted in the first 6 years of our lives, around the time of conception, fetal development, and the infant phase of our life. Whatever program we receive then is responsible for our life characteristics as adults. So when a person gets a cancer, it wasn't, oh, I just got a cancer. It was something that was building over a long period of time until it reaches a point where it manifests itself. Habits make patterns, and every time you repeat a habit, it gets stronger. So if you start off with a bad habit and grow up with a bad habit, by the time you're older, man, that habit is so strong and so concrete, it feels like you can't change it. But fortunately, there are new biology ways, new energy psychology ways to rewrite these beliefs. We have to recognize we've been programmed so we can recover our power by rewriting the programs of limitation and putting in the programs of our abilities so that our biology can live up to its full potential.
My next guest is from earlier in my lifetime. He has brought forward the message of how our thoughts create our reality. Here is some vintage film from over 60 years ago. Meet Napoleon Hill.
And now, may I request that you forget all your problems and just relax while I bring you the master key with which you may unlock the door to any opportunity that your mind can conceive. When I first heard Andrew Carnegie describe this natural law, which makes it possible for you and I and everyone else to write his own price tag in life and attain it, I became so enthused over it that I began to search for the power back of it, a power which is greater than poverty, greater than the lack of education, greater than all of your fears and superstitions combined. It is the power to take possession of your own mind and direct it to whatever ends you may desire. My search led me to the study of the spiritual forces with which all of us are blessed. And it was in this field that I came upon a clue which has enabled me to help millions of people to find their earthly destinies. Everyone, said Mr. Carnegie, comes to the earth plane blessed with the privilege of controlling his mind power and directing it to whatever ends he may choose. But, he continued, everyone brings over with him at birth the equivalent of 2 sealed envelopes, one of which is clearly labeled, the riches you may enjoy if you take possession of your own mind and direct it to ends of your own choice. And the other is labeled, the penalties you must pay if you neglect to take possession of your mind and direct it. And now let me reveal to you the contents of those 2 sealed envelopes. In the one labeled riches is this list of blessings. 1, sound health. 2, peace of mind. 3, a labor of love of your own choice. 4, freedom from fear and worry. 5, a positive mental attitude. 6, material riches of your own choice and quantity. In the sealed envelope labeled penalties, Mr. Carnegie continued, is this list of the prices one must pay for neglecting to take possession of his own mind. 1, ill health. 2, fear and worry. 3, indecision and doubt. 4, frustration and discouragement throughout life. 5, poverty and want. 6, and a whole flock of evils consisting of envy, greed, jealousy, anger, hatred, and superstition. Psychologists have discovered a natural law which is the very foundation of all personal successes. And I can describe it to you in one short sentence so you can understand it. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
When I began speaking at medical conferences about my experience with cancer patients and the relationship between mind and body, the reaction of other doctors was quite a surprise. They were very angry with me over my experience. I remember one asking me at the end of a conference, "Are you telling us that we're doing it wrong?" I have found that closed minds do not want to hear or accept anything new, and they resist if you introduce them to new concepts. They prefer to hold on to the security of their beliefs and not let their experience alter them, even when others have seen the truth placed before their eyes. As Shakespeare said, "There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so." Try opening your mind up just a little. The slightest change in perspective can alter your entire life.
The power of the human heart is the next great frontier. It's a power that has been discounted and overlooked since science began, largely 300 years ago. It is the human heart, the very first organ that forms in our bodies when we're in our mother's womb. Now, to many people, when we think of a heart, we think simply of a pump that moves blood through our bodies. And while that is an important function, what the studies are showing is that it may be the least of what our hearts do. That our hearts are actually the master organ that send the signals to our brain that either affirm our health and our healing or become the obstacle between us and our healing. This is a key, and it's a subtle key, but it's a powerful key. The signal that the heart sends to the brain is based upon the way we feel in our bodies and about our world. When we feel a sense of well-being and safe, for example, that is one quality of a signal our heart sends to our brain, and based upon that signal, our brain sends the chemicals into our bodies that affirms and sustains that healing. And what the studies are showing is that in the presence of those kinds of experiences based on what we would call appreciation or gratitude, care, compassion, those are the quality of feelings that trigger this experience in our hearts that establishes the coherence between our heart and our brain. It's during these times that our brain tells our bodies to create what we would call a healing chemistry in our bodies.
I think that we need to be more serious about the power and our responsibility when it comes to spiritual healing. You know, when Einstein said we will not solve the problems of the world from the level of thinking we were at when we created them. And the way this is spoken of spiritually is the idea that enlightenment begins as an intellectual abstract concept, but then it has to make that journey without distance from the head to the heart.
There is a personal power in you that is only accessible when you move from your head into your heart, into your core. When we are accessing our gut feelings and what we feel in our personal space, what we feel in our hearts, we are accessing the infinite possibility that is available to us. When we move into our heads, we automatically move into a world of limitation, a world that is based upon what we think we should be doing, thinking, saying, feeling. We move in a way in life that does not allow us to actually feel what we choose. So to find personal power, to find that unlimited access to the ability to self-heal, we must move from our intellect and into what is given to us at birth, our pure presence. Being present with ourselves is what allows us to move in a way that our path unfolds automatically.
There were studies that were done in a number of medical institutions in the late 1990s, the early 2000s. And these were some of the first studies that were actually linking human emotion with the heart. And very specific kinds of emotion. When we talk about heart disease, the hardening of the arteries, high cholesterol, the plate buildup, high blood pressure. When the scientists began to look closely and cross these traditional boundaries, they found that those were specific examples that fall under the umbrella of an emotion that we call hurt. And precisely unresolved hurt. So I don't want to leave you with the sense that experiencing hurt is a bad thing in our lives. It's not, as long as we recognize that hurt that we feel, whether it's the hurt from the loss of our loved ones or the loss of a way of life, something that has disappointed us, that hurt is a signal inviting us to reconcile and resolve that feeling. It's the unresolved hurt.
So the more loving I can be with myself, the more likely I am to access this heart space. And it is in this heart space that my intuitions and my inspirations and my gut feelings and the wisdom that I have inherited from the ages come together. And in that heart space is where we allow ourselves to access our unlimited power and our infinite possibility.
When you stop resisting your feelings, you will see that they offer you a source of wisdom and an opportunity for nourishment and growth. So do not numb your feelings or distract yourself, but define your experience and see how it can become your teacher. And then life challenges become a blessing. Listen to what your body is telling you. This is why Mother Nature gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. My advice? Let go of the hurt, abandon the wounds of the past, and focus on creating a great today. Communicate. You will live a longer, healthier life if you express your feelings, even if it is in a journal. So when decisions must be made, let your heart make up your mind.
Love is a feeling that doesn't require another human at all. I mean, you could go outside and look at a beautiful landscape, and I mean, that just blows your mind, and you go, oh my God, you just feel it. Love is a feeling that the system, your biology, is taking whatever you're looking at, your interpretation, and saying that whatever that thing is, that is so in harmony with me, that I will release the chemistry of harmony. So love is like a beautiful sine wave, a beautiful, nice, smooth wave like this. And I go, what's fear? And I go, oh, fear is a choppy line like that. And I say, so you can feel the choppy line, you can feel the smooth line. And the smooth line love is what you're feeling are the emotional chemicals that say, what I'm interpreting in this world around me is fully supportive and in harmony with the desires and wishes of my life.
One of the most powerful tools, and not one that the mind would think of, is self-love. Love is what is happening constantly. The question is, to what degree am I allowing myself to participate in it? We've always associated feeling loved by being loved by something outside of ourselves. And when we do that, we constantly set ourselves in a state of fear. What happens if you stop loving me? What happens if I never find someone to love me? Well, no one ever did love me. My parents didn't love me, my family, siblings didn't love me. All kinds of absence of love has been existing. In the empowered state that you actually are, what do you think you were interested in when you came into this life and you landed in those kinds of circumstances? You must have been interested in finding it in there and bringing it out in some way. When it wasn't delivered or isn't consistently delivered today, there's a reason for that. And when we begin embracing that perspective, we begin to access our empowerment.
I think many people are coming to understand the value and the importance of serious spiritual practice. By that I mean prayer, meditation that is not just relaxation and contemplation, but something that includes a mantra of sorts, whether it's Buddhist meditation, Transcendental meditation, the workbook of A Course in Miracles. There are many meditation paths, but a serious meditation path actually changes your brainwave patterns, and that is what dismantles, and nothing less than that, by the way. That is the zone, that is the realm which is beyond the intellectual, where these horrifyingly destructive, even to the point of the creation of physical illness, are dismantled. Those thought forms are dismantled, and the love of self and others becomes not just a concept, but a living and an operational reality.
When we begin to listen to what I actually want, what I actually choose, what I'm actually feeling, how I would have it be if I could have it any way I wanted, and we begin to honor that, even in tiny little ways, we begin to build a life expression that is based upon self-love. Does it mean that you have to take a vacation for yourself or go take a bubble bath and light some candles? Is that what it means to self-love? Yes, and you can also do it while you're driving down the road in your car. You can also do it when someone's talking to you and you're starting to feel yourself contract and retreat because of something that's being said. In that moment, you can simply drop your energy down into your body, feel yourself, be present with yourself, allow yourself to notice your breathing, and that will elicit responses in the nervous system, it will elicit responses in the cardiovascular system, all of which give impressions to the subconscious mind and into the brain that say, I am safe, I am okay.
So the idea of forgiving ourselves and loving ourselves, and that kind of gentleness towards ourselves is extremely important, because whatever it is that we've been doing that's dysfunctional or that is mistaken, self-sabotaging, self-destructive, or even destructive or sabotaging towards someone else, if after I've done it, I'm involved in a never-ending hatred of self, that actually will tempt me to do it even more. You know, the ego mind, the fear-based ego, is both that which sets us up to do the wrong thing and then punishes us savagely for having done it. So, gentleness towards self and others is literally a spiritual strength.
Without trying to sound like a greeting card, love is everything. Truly, it's everything. Because from love, springs life. From love. It's hard to talk about what love is because it's so huge. It's so everywhere that it can't be contained. Love can be felt. If you have love, if you feel love, just feel love. Whether it's with another person, whatever the circumstance is, you are very blessed and fortunate.
We need to learn to love ourselves first in all our glory and our imperfections. We are perfectly imperfect. If we were to make only one change to transform the quality of our lives, we might try sending a little love our own way.
I've spent almost all my waking hours reading everything from the scientific literature on human nutrition, probably read over 20,000 medical journal articles. And the bottom line is that you don't have to have a heart attack. You don't have to have strokes. You don't have to get demented when you get older. And yes, we can even win the war against cancer.
Nutrition is life itself, right? Your body is life, and life can only sustain itself on life. All living things have to eat living things because every single cell in your body is constantly being turned over. You're replacing 2 million red blood cells a second. There's 2 million, there's 2 million, there's 2 million, there's 2 million. what are you making them out of? I got professional athletes coming to me that are living off of soda pop and corn chips. And I asked them, could you make a brain out of that? Could you make eyeballs out of that? Right? And they never thought about that. They actually think they're just like a car. They just pour anything that'll go down the hole in and they'll just keep on running. They think it's just molecules like wood going into a furnace.
The food that we're eating is actually causing us to die much younger than we should. And the primary reason we die early is because of the amount of food we eat. If you want to go back to the way nature created us, then the idea is to go back to eat in a natural state.
Your miserable death is coming based on what you put in your gob. And this was the hardest transformation for me. The exercise thing, great. I made that switch quickly. But I like double cheeseburgers with bacon. Hello, I mean yummy, right? It took me almost 1.5 years to begin the process of cleaning up my diet. So, you know, what I would say is don't beat yourself up if it's not perfect every meal. But begin to make those changes. You know, begin to eliminate the things that are slowly killing you. Change is good, and regardless of what degree it is, as long as you're moving in the right direction, good things are going to happen.
I just felt empowered all of a sudden to really start focusing on eating the right way, doing exercises that I could. My entire diet changed. I went to fruits and veggies and, you know, very, very little meat, drank lots of liquids. I started getting stronger and stronger. It was just incredible, the difference that I could make in my own life.
Food supplies the raw materials the body needs to function optimally. We are eating a diet today that's high in macronutrients. We're taking in too much fat, too much protein, too much carbohydrate. We're taking in too much calories, but not enough of these micronutrients, because when we process foods, we lose the micronutrients that nature put in the food to begin with. So we have to get back to eating natural plant foods.
One of the greatest risks to a person's health is eating commercially raised animals and fish, because they're raised with tremendous amounts of dangerous chemicals, anabolic hormones, antibiotics, a variety of other chemicals that are used. So if people base their diet on large commercially raised animals, they get large doses of commercial toxins, and you turn yourself into an industrial waste furnace. 94% of all the money spent on food worldwide is spent on commercially raised toxic food, and our ancestors didn't buy that because it didn't exist at that time. I have worked with many obese people, and one of my drills is to say, I want you to go get a picture of your great-grandmother or any generation beyond her, and what they find out is that hardly anybody can find a picture of a great-grandmother or great-grandfather that's fat. Why? Because it's an indication that the body holds its shape and form for a lifetime if it's fed according to the laws of nature.
It wasn't until about 20 years ago where nutritional scientists first started studying and recognizing that phytochemicals, this third class of micronutrients, was the major micronutrient load in food. What I'm saying here is that a strawberry has not just 30 nutrients, it has 700 different nutrients or more. That a piece of broccoli has over 1,000 different micronutrients in it. There's a full symphony of micronutrients that support a heightened or a normalcy of human immune function. In other words, it raises the immune function, gives us the ability to protect ourselves against infection, against cancer. And that the body is not naturally designed to develop heart disease and hardening the arteries leading to blood pressure with aging. It's not the consequence of aging. The body is already a miraculous self-healing machine. We cut ourselves and the body repairs it. We damage ourselves inside our cells and the body can repair it as well. But it can't do so without having these micronutrients. When we don't take in the nutrients the body is intended to have by its natural design, then disease develops. So the foods with the highest amount of micronutrients are green vegetables, berries, mushrooms, onions, beans, seeds, natural plant foods that are not processed, obviously.
When you study the super old centenarians on this planet, you learn the beauty of their existence. You learn that they eat small amounts of non-processed foods. It's not rocket science. You learn that they physically are active with their body. They have very strong social groups. And the average centenarian, 100-year-old, is healthier than the American 70-year-old, and there's 30 years difference. And ask yourself, if you're gonna accumulate lots of wealth, if you're gonna retire, do you wanna be traveling in a walker? That doesn't sound fun, does it?
It's important to practice good nutrition. but don't make it too stressful. Enjoy your food when you're eating. If you're worrying about what you eat all the time, it's probably not doing you much good. As you know, harmful chemicals are released when we create stress. So eat your food peacefully. My advice is to live a little, have your chocolate ice cream every now and then, because we're all here for a limited amount of time.
There are many cases where patients have a disease and we refer to them as being terminally ill, and everyone counts them out. And then occasionally these terminally ill patients all of a sudden have a remarkable, miraculous, what we call spontaneous remission. And we say, well, how did these people heal themselves? And there's one underlying characteristic of all cases of spontaneous remission, and that is simply this. Each of these people had a profound change in belief that preceded their healing.
When people begin to accept that there might be another answer other than the one that they've been hearing about and other than the treatment programs that they've been exposed to, when they begin to realize there may be another place inside of me, there may be another way of finding a solution to this circumstance I find myself in, transformation begins to happen. And it is in that moment that they are actually moving from a fear-based head orientation to a heartful, soulful, personal intimacy. And that is where healing happens. So I've had the honor of witnessing many people turn many circumstances completely around. Circumstances where they were given weeks to live, where they are described as being in stage 5 of cancer, and basically they're sent home to go get their life circumstances in order. And something happens in those individuals that don't follow the plan that was handed to them in that moment. They feel whether or not that feels true for them. And they reach inside and they notice that it doesn't feel so true. Something else must be true. There's some other element in the picture that has to be accessed. And what happens is a decision is made. They drop into this place where they actually begin to establish a relationship with themselves that they have never had before. And they didn't even know that they didn't have it. And 6 years later, or 10 years later, or 15 years later, I'm still having conversations with these individuals that were no longer supposed to be with us. What is it that happened? Did God intervene? I believe, I know, I sense from the experiences that I have had that there wasn't any intervention other than there was a transformation. And what transformed was their focal point. They focused from living in their head and in their fear and waiting for someone else to tell them what was meant to be for them, to dropping inside and feeling what they chose, what their free will was actually going to allow to unfold for them based upon their changed or their transformed focus in their life.
When you change the consciousness, you change the genetics and behavior of the cells. And when you do this with this great intention, you can actually eliminate a death sentence that you've been diagnosed with and rewrite your life.
And you can either live like everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle. But once again, you can't just wait till you get ill and then say, oh, you know, maybe I can have a miracle. The most powerful way to live is to live that way about everything, whether you've been diagnosed with a physical illness or not. Consider the possibility of infinite possibility. That is the hallmark of a spiritually open mind. And the spiritually open mind is home to miracles.
Absolutely everything that happens in our lives has a spiritual cause. Mental, emotional, and physical events are only effects. Your body has a healing order of priority, and the spiritual always comes first. Your body stores your life's memories. When you focus on what is wrong, you wound your body and empower your enemy. When you focus on life and living, miracles happen. Open to your potential, to what is built into all living things at birth, your genius, your wisdom, your universal intelligence. And by the way, most of what's considered impossible is just a consensus of outdated beliefs.
You don't have to have a heart attack. You don't have to have a stroke. You don't have to get demented when you get older. What's that worth to you? Is that worth $1 million, or is that simply priceless? We can have incredible health. And wouldn't you want that? And why would you want to eat the way other Americans eat and then get what other Americans get? Who would want to be suffering and not living life to your fullest? We want to be fully active, physically fit, and enjoying our life and be fully living the years we are alive.
Are you sick and tired of feeling and looking the way you do? Well, find out something that you love and do it. And don't be a perfectionist about it. I've been working on handstands for 6 years. Just getting them. 6 years. You figured I'd give up in the first 2 months. I don't say I can't, I just say I can't yet. You start something new and you go, no, I can't. Well, of course you can't, it's new. You know, you don't become a CEO in a half an hour. You know, I mean, these things take time. So that's really the magic. The magic is show up. Woody Allen, 80% of life is showing up. I say the other 20% is paying attention to what's happening when you're there.
You spend all your life making money, and then you spend your wealth to regain your health. So don't do that. Your body, my body, your family's bodies, everybody's bodies want to be healthy. They want to be alive. It strives to be in balance. And it all depends with what you choose to put from your fork to your mouth, what you put on your skin, what you have in your environment. And the right choices can create longevity, but even better than that, it can help you avoid disease.
The cure is you. The cure is what you do in your own life, in your own kitchen, how you take care of yourself, how you exercise, how you think properly, how you act properly. In other words, take good care of yourself, do what's right, live a healthy life, and you will manifest excellent health.
So the truth of the matter is, the cure is you. You have the power within you to transform your body and avoid disease by your choice every day.
We either have faith in our disaster, or we have faith in the power of a higher power to solve the disaster. We tend in our society to have more faith that cancer can kill us than we have faith that God can heal us. And so the power of the mind is given over to the power of the cancer. If somebody says to you, this cancer could kill you, we go, oh, it's almost like we say amen. We are so quick to buy into it and believe it. Faith in a higher power, the God of our understanding, however we understand Him, is maybe yes and maybe no. You know? So where you place your faith, and that gets back into this idea of cultivating the power of your mind. Where do you stand?
We have the ability to feel in our hearts in very precise ways that will influence the world. The question is, what is it that we feel? If we live in chronic fear, then the world operates in that chronic fear. If we give ourselves the reason to embrace the principles of coherence and appreciation and gratitude in our personal lives, we know the science tells us that that becomes the condition within which the world begins to operate.
Do what you love to do and focus on living. And don't even think about that. Don't even, if you think about it, it's drawing it to you. Focus on living and do what you love to do.
If you understand a process, and this requires a process, you can essentially push a record button in the subconscious mind and rewrite those beliefs that have been limiting us and sabotaging us and have been producing the illnesses and diseases that we manifest on this planet. Because this is knowledge of self, and knowledge is power. And knowledge of self, by definition, is self-empowerment. Until you know how you actually work, then we're really not in control of our own lives. But the moment you understand the nature of programming, the difference between the conscious and the subconscious mind, and the mechanisms by which life comes from these beliefs, when we know that, then we are fully empowered to recognize that we are more powerful than we could have ever imagined before.
I went in for a blood test, and my doctor came back with the results, and she looked at me and said, "Look at your blood results." And I looked at this, and she said, you're actually making your own blood. And it was completely healthy. They were showing no cancer whatsoever in my bone marrow.
I had no problems and a quick recovery.
Having gotten cancer, I feel liberated. Now, I know that may sound weird, because how do you get liberated from getting cancer? But as a result of the cancer, what I've gone through, I feel liberated because what cancer teaches you, me, is don't sweat the small stuff. And it really is all small stuff.
It was a miracle. It was a miracle. And that's all I can say, that God gave me a miracle, and I was producing, and you know, my bone marrow was going to be okay. I'm very grateful. Very, very grateful.
Life is for the purpose of living and all those things, and enjoying and creating health for yourself.
The most important thing is to look at your life while you're in it. So you don't have to get this far. You have to go, okay, I'm not happy for whatever reason. I need to change that now because I don't want my body to get sick because of it.
So in terms of what you're saying, so how do you be happy? You know, what do you use to get to that place? You be happy.
There's only one way, and it's very scary, that I know of, and that was to become loving and more loving, and to really open up and love yourself and love others, and use the power of that love to get yourself better and to get yourself well and to make life worth living.
Use every bit of strength that you can, and to think positively. I mean, just the power of positive thinking was huge for me, and it can be for you too.